Are you wondering how long you should be able to hold your bladder for? If you're wondering that, chances are you maybe think you're holding your bladder for too long or not long enough. So let's dive into what the research shows. My name's Krista. I'm a pelvic physiotherapist, so I have a master's degree in physical therapy and extensive training in pelvic health. And so I have expertise in teaching you exactly about your bladder function and how your muscles are involved in that. Based on research, we know that you should be emptying your bladder 6 to 8 times per day, which means that you should be holding your bladder for only 2 to 4 hours between each void. That's going to vary depending on how long you're up and how much you sleep, but that's the ideal range, is you're going 2 to 4 hours in between emptying your bladder. If you empty your bladder and then after an hour you feel the urge that you need to go again, ideally, if everything's working exactly how we want, you should be able to make it to 2 hours without having to empty your bladder. But there are considerations that are really important to talk about here. So what I don't want you to do is think, oh no, I need to start holding for 2 hours and then hold your bladder and for it to feel incredibly uncomfortable and maybe for you to leak or something because you're trying to hold for so long and it just doesn't feel natural for you. So let's talk about how you can get to the point where you're emptying your bladder every 2 to 4 hours. If you're emptying your bladder not often enough, so you're going longer than 4 hours between empties, that's usually a little bit easier to get on top of because you could just start reminding yourself to go to the washroom, or when you do feel the urge to go, going pretty much right away if you can, so that you're not holding your bladder longer than that 4-hour timeline. If you're noticing though that that's still impossible to do, then you might not be drinking enough water. Ideally, you want to be drinking 6 to 9 glasses of water today, so about 2 to 3 liters of water per day. And if you're not drinking that amount, then that might be why you're not emptying your bladder as frequently. So there are 2 things you can try: checking in with your bladder more frequently and going to the washroom when you do feel the urge and trying not to hold it past 4 hours. And increase your water intake if you're not getting those 6 to 8 glasses per day. If you're emptying your bladder too frequently, that's where it can get a little bit tricky to get into that 2 to 4 hour window. If this is the case, there's a few things that might be going on. The first thing is your urine might be irritating your bladder. And your urine can irritate your bladder if you drink too many bladder irritants or if you drink not enough water. So ideally you want to drink 6 to 8 glasses of flat, plain water per day, and you want to limit how many bladder irritants you consume per day. Bladder irritants are caffeine, alcohol, and carbonation. So ideally, if you have a cup of a bladder irritant, so say you have a cup of coffee in the morning, you want to drink the equivalent amount of water, so the same size cup of water, to cancel out that bladder irritant. So you need to actually use a formula. If you're drinking 8 glasses of water per day, then you have a cup of coffee, and you want to keep that amount, that 8 number, you need to drink another glass of water to counteract the coffee. So you have to drink 9 glasses of water, then you subtract 1 for the coffee, and your total for the day is 8. So that's the first thing you can address. Address the water intake and the bladder irritant intake. It seems counterintuitive. You might think, well, if I drink more volume, I'll pee more. But in fact, if you're drinking more volume and your urine is less irritating to your bladder, then you're more likely to not have to go as frequently. I will note here though that the gold standard for this is to do this with your pelvic physiotherapist, so they can guide you through how quickly to increase your water intake. If you only drink 2 glasses of water per day, if you drank 8 glasses of water tomorrow, that would be a huge, quick change for you. And so ideally, you want to try to do that slowly over time, and a physiotherapist can really help you understand what pace you should do that at. The other reason you might be going too frequently is that your bladder has just developed that habit. Your bladder might give you the signal that it's full before it's actually full. So it'll feel like, yep, I have to go, my bladder feels full, but it actually isn't full and you don't actually need to go. And so in order to retrain your bladder, again, getting guidance from a pelvic physiotherapist is the best way to do this. But you could try challenging yourself and see if when you feel the urge, if you could hold maybe an extra 10 minutes. instead of going right away, and then maybe in another 10 minutes the next week, and slowly see if you can start going further and further and further apart from each other and retraining your bladder that way. The other thing that could be going on is you might actually not be relaxing your pelvic floor completely when you're emptying your bladder. So you sit on the toilet, you try to empty your bladder. If your pelvic floor muscles don't fully relax, then you might not be completely emptying your bladder. If you imagine that you're emptying your bladder halfway every time you go to the washroom, then you're going to be more likely to need to go relatively quickly after that, because it's not going to take too long for that bladder to fill up again because it's already half full. And so you might go twice as frequently because you're only emptying half every single time you go. And so the way that you can get on top of this is learning how to relax your pelvic floor muscles. You could try out this yoga for the pelvic floor class. I'll put it up here for you, where I teach you how to relax your pelvic floor muscles with your breath. But also a great way to learn how to do this is to work with a pelvic physiotherapist who can teach you how to properly relax your pelvic floor when sitting on the toilet so that you can empty your bladder completely, and then that'll just automatically mean that you won't need to go as frequently. Okay, so to wrap up, I covered how you can go more frequently if you're not going frequently enough, and then how you can spread out your bladder empties if you're going too frequently, so that you're emptying your bladder every 2 to 4 hours instead of less or instead of more. As I mentioned in the video, the absolute best person to help you with this is a pelvic physiotherapist. They can help guide you through how to retrain your bladder, how to change your fluid intake, all of that, and of course how to use your pelvic floor muscles. And if you want to book with one of us, we see everyone online, so you can visit the link in the description of this video to book with one of us. If you learned something from this video, consider giving us a thumbs up, and you can subscribe to our channel if you want to learn more about pelvic health topics. All right, have a good day. Bye.